Hello. I am so proud of you for deciding to see a therapist. And no, you can't be in this video. I have put together a compilation of all of my social media TikToks talking about how to find the best therapist. And there is a PDF that's free on my website that has all of this information. Get it at strugglecare.com. Go to the shop and download it for free. Okie dokie, enjoy. Okay, a great place to start when you're looking for a therapist is psychologytoday.com. You can put in your zip code. It'll show you different therapists. You can search by issue. You can search by insurance. You can search by gender. You can search by age, types of therapy, faith, price bracket, sexuality. There's lots of great stuff here. The other thing that's really helpful is there's an email feature, because I know that for a lot of people, calling on the phone is very uncomfortable. And so when you're doing the little email feature, this is an example of something to say. So you ask them, are you currently accepting new clients? And if so, please let me know your fee. And is there a time we could speak briefly to see if you might be a good fit? It is okay to ask for a consult, a free 15-minute consult over the phone to see if they would be good for you. All right, here it is again if you want to screenshot it. When looking for a new therapist, here are the 4 questions that you ask them during your 15-minute free phone consultation. First, ask them about your schedule. If you could only see a therapist on the weekends or on evenings, go ahead and get that out there and make sure they see clients during those times. Question number 2, what experience do you have with, and then fill in the blank, with identity factors and issue factors? So what experience do you have with transgender individuals? What experience do you have with stay-at-home moms and their issues? What experience do you have with depression or anxiety or trauma? Number 3, here's the quote. In terms of your approach, what does a typical session look like? Asking the question this way is going to avoid them throwing out big counseling theories that you may or may not understand, and get right into the nitty-gritty of, is this person active? Are they passive? Do they ask questions? Do they challenge? Do they sit back? Are you expected to lead? Are they going to lead? Lastly, ask them if they see clients in the short term or the long term or both, to make sure that that's what you're looking for. Follow up with this question, and overall, you're just looking for someone that made you feel comfortable. So while I agree with the sentiment behind this question, it is my experience that all the best therapists have done their own work. I wouldn't actually ask this question of a therapist. For one, it's a very personal question, and they're not obligated to tell you their personal business in a professional setting. Secondly, whether or not someone actively has a therapist at that time doesn't mean that they haven't done the work it takes to be self-aware and a good therapist. A question you can ask in the first session, which is on my list, is, do you engage in supervision? So a lot of therapists have what we call peer supervision, where they meet with other therapists to talk about their cases, de-identified. They don't know your name or your details. But it's not just talking about, hey, what are some ideas I could do with this client? A bulk of supervision is about what is coming up for me in relation to these topics, so that I can be self-aware, I can be clear, I can do my own work so that I can be a better therapist. That's a question you can ask. So let's address this question specifically. When looking for a therapist, it is not helpful to say, are you comfortable working with fill in the blank, transgender, gay, bisexual, asexual? Because almost every therapist is going to say yes, but that doesn't tell you the information you need. So here's what to ask instead. Number 1, do you feel I can fully recover from my mental health symptoms without changing my fill in the blank? Because what you don't want, and what happens to people, is to get balls deep into therapy with someone, to have them whip out something like, well, I think you're actually gay because of that abuse. Or I think your depression would go away if you started being monogamous and admitted you weren't really bisexual. You don't want that. Second question, how will we work on managing my symptoms while honoring my fill in the blank identity? Because you're not looking for someone who's comfortable with you or tolerant of you. You're looking for someone who knows how to support you, affirm you, empower you, and help you. All right, we're talking about finding a good therapist, and how do you ask them if they're religious, and how do you know if that religion is going to impact the way they give you therapy? I'm going to give you the 2 questions. You will absolutely get your answer if you ask these. Number 1, do you believe I can fully recover from these symptoms outside of religious ideas? This is going to prompt your therapist to either say, yeah, of course, or, well, I don't think you necessarily need to be religious, but I do believe that some sort of spirituality is usually really important. So then you can talk about, well, what do you mean by spirituality? You're talking about God, you're talking about meaning and purpose. Or they're going to say something like, you know what, I think I can help you with your symptoms, but at the end of the day, I think true freedom comes from Jesus Christ. If you do not want any spiritual concepts, you're going to say, if I don't want spiritual concepts to be a part of my therapy, what interventions would you use? And do you think that'd be sufficient to meet my goals? Because if they say we don't have to talk about spirituality, but they don't have any other way to help you besides that, they're not for you. They've got to have other tricks in their bag. You might decide, even though they are religious, it sounds like they could work for you, but you deserve the answers. So what any therapist would say to you in response to this is to bring this up with your therapist. But I also think that, like, if you're a therapist watching this, it's also the therapist's job to make sure that the client understands that it is appropriate to do so. Because that kind of engaging in healthy conflict is something that takes most people like years of therapy to learn. And so expecting a client of a few weeks to have the ability to bring up that you leave sessions early, or that they don't like that you're passive, is not really fair. And so it is 100% appropriate to bring these things up to your therapist. The overwhelming majority of them will respond positively, but it's also your therapist's job to make sure you understand that that is appropriate to do so with them, and they welcome that. I'm going to give you another tool for finding a good therapist. Whether you are going to a new therapist for the first time, or you have a therapist that you're working with right now that you feel like the approach isn't quite helping, here is a worksheet that you can fill out. This PDF is uploaded to my blog. You can go through this and ask yourself, do I want a therapist that mostly listens, or someone leading the conversation? Do I want someone who is going to show me that they care, or am I really uncomfortable when they show emotions and I'd rather they kind of be a blank slate? Now, it's often, to most of the time, true that the thing that is most beneficial to us also makes us really uncomfortable. So it's not about telling your therapist how to never make you uncomfortable, but more about opening up a conversation about what might be a best approach. Because what we don't want is for you to continue to feel like you're not being helped and then quit altogether. A lot of these approaches are things that a good therapist can switch up depending on what the client needs. And if they can't, time to move on. So what do you do if you want a therapist that is going to be able to incorporate your faith into your counseling experience? Well, there are questions for that too. Here they are. So you don't necessarily have to ask them if they are a Christian, if they are a Muslim. You certainly can ask that, but it's a personal question. They may not answer you. But if you ask them, how familiar are you with the faith? They'll either say, well, I've worked with these many people, or I've studied, or they might disclose, well, I am of that faith. And if you say, I'd like my religion to be respected during our work or incorporated into our work, and then ask them, are you equipped to do that? Or how would you do that? You're going to get enough information from that answer to know whether they're going to be able to meet your needs. So you found a therapist, you had a consultation, you're now going in for the first session. Remember, the first session is not a marriage ceremony, it's a job interview. This is a person you're going to hire to help you. So you want to ask the right questions, talk about the right things to figure out if they're the one for you. You're going to tell them a little bit about you, but here's a list of things that you should be talking about in this first session and get a sense from them. Is this the person that's going to handle things in a way that's helpful for you? Here's the list. Screenshot it, or go to my blog where this is loaded as a PDF and a full blog describing what the reason behind all of these points are, okay? Next, religion, sexuality, gender identity, medications. You need to know your therapist's stance on these things if any of these things apply to you. You can't just ask, are you comfortable with XYZ, or how do you feel about XYZ? You have to ask the question in a way that is going to force them to give you the information you need about their real view.